This is the story about how I went from a very young girl dealing with life to becoming a leader, a combat commander, breaking barriers for women throughout my career, and being allowed to do some of the most extraordinary things. And I want to share that this story isn't about to brag about what I've done. It's about sharing what I wish I had known so that my work today, where I help women stay at their best when they are carrying enormous loads and challenged every day in how to stay loving and caring and strong and with high integrity, that it would not have been possible without learning a number of lessons. So let's get started. When I was a young child, luckily for me, my mother loved horses. At a very young age, I was riding horses, first in front of her in the saddle, and then later we had a pony and I rode that pony. If anyone knows what ponies do, they will test you. This one, the first time I went in the ring, tried to roll me off. He went down on his body to try to roll me off on the dirt. Another time tried to run away with me. Luckily, my oldest brother Michael was there to grab him. Then they had this sweet horse, and that horse was so kind, except one day he wanted to go home. But what do you learn when you're riding horses? Everybody know this lesson? I mean, even if you don't ride horses, when you get bucked off the horse or you fall off the horse, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to get right back on and keep going. That's something I learned at 3, 4. What they don't tell you when you're horseback riding is that once you're in the saddle, it is magical. They have shown how autistic children begin to talk. They tell you how people who are handicapped and they're not able to move around well can get on a horse and feel so free. For a child like me, I was pushing the pedal to the metal. I was jumping at a very young age, and I was doing things that were simply incredible. Now, I think that even though I started at a very young age, I didn't reach my peak until about 12, where I won all the big trophies at this horse show that I was at. I loved and continued to horseback ride. But it taught me that very important lesson to hang in there. And when you get bucked off or thrown off, which I have maybe 100 times, is that you learn all kinds of things. You learn how to fall and you learn how to get back on quickly, rather than focusing on, oh, this is terrible, which you can do. Another lesson in a young age, which this started with horseback riding, but also in swimming, swim team growing up, and in high school I was a captain of the swim team. That's your personal best. It's much like those who love to run, but swimming I could do your personal best, and you're always trying to get better and better and better. It's important that early and often, if our younger people would test themselves and do really tough things, because that really is the best time to learn these lessons. We learn lessons as we age. Now, I chose to go to a place that no women had ever gone before, not in the 174 years that it was there, the military academy at West Point, and that is the Army. I graduated from high school. Think of being an 18-year-old going into an environment where I didn't realize it truly was a social revolution. That social revolution encouraged wide debate and sometimes very horrible debates and accusations that then came directed toward us in various forms, whether it was in the media, that women didn't belong, why are you letting women go there? I thank all of those who made that possible for me to go that year. You already know that it's going to be rough because West Point's a place to really challenge yourself. My father went there, but I had never been there before I went into the application process. And I knew that they would yell at me, for example, and they did. But they also tested us physically, mentally, emotionally, leadership-wise. They tested us. It was hard. Worse, it also was sometimes personal attacks against us. The cadets had been 3-year groups had never had women there, and they were trying to carry on tradition. The graduates, not all of them, but some of them, were encouraging them, you need to run those women out of there and show them they don't have a place there. Why? Because women can't handle it, we're not physically capable, all these reasons they came up with for why we shouldn't be there. And so every day was a challenge. Every day was tough. I learned that you have to just stick with it. You have to continue, and you have to look beyond the surface, because on the surface was pretty awful. I remember also that first day where the zipper broke on the women's uniforms. Later I learned they had changed out the zippers to be color coordinated. Someone well-intentioned had changed the zippers, but they weren't up to the task of our heavyweight trousers that needed to be strong, like the men's steel zippers. And so that first day, I think the average was about 50% of the women's pants zippers broke. Now, they turn us from a civilian into someone who can march in a parade, raise their right hand, and swear an oath to the Constitution in formation. That's a heavy task to do. Then imagine, what am I going to have to do? Hold my pants up with my hands? How do you do that? Okay, try it. Was this side, so can you really do it if you have to raise your right hand? There are many stories that I have from those days, and so do my sisters in arms. It taught me that I needed to have goals. Now, you can have dreams, but you also need to have goals. And for me, the goal I had was first, that I was going to make the first 2 years. If I made it through the first 2 years, then I could decide, because that's the time where you owe a commitment after 2 years. I have to tell you, I had to have something to go beyond that, because at the 2-year mark, I was getting proposals for marriage or all these things that people talk about. The fact is, just because I'm complaining about something and it's hard, doesn't mean that I want to quit. I've never learned to quit. I know psychologically, whether it's on a run, that first year was incredibly hard for me to finish those runs. I practiced 1.5 miles, and the cadet in charge on the second day said, the run for today is 2 miles. I just about died. I was getting very sick, that sick feeling when you know you're going to be tested. And then, of course, it's in formation. I had not run in formation before, and that can be very difficult when you have people from 5 feet to 6'5", and the pressure and the spacing, that's hard enough. I had to find a way, and I did, that's a story for another day, but I found a way to focus and go well beyond what I had ever done physically. That second day taught me that I could do it, and then I was able to continue to do it. I won't tell you it was easy. These were hard lessons that I was learning. And I felt sick every morning. Those things were hard. You have to have a goal, because if you don't have a real solid goal, then you will be susceptible to what happens to you during that time. And if it gets to be difficult, you're going to want to say, it's too costly. I don't want to do it. I would have missed out on what I'm sharing with you today if I had quit earlier. After West Point, I learned that just because you make it to one goal, there's a whole lot of things that could happen to you afterwards. We graduated in 1980. 78, they started integrating women into all the services. They had separate corps for the women, like the Women's Army Corps, the WAC Corps, for all the women who served there before me. I could not have done what I did if they hadn't done their job first. We had to live through challenges, not all the same, but similar challenges to the hostility and the anger and the misperceptions and well-intentioned people causing us to have more problems than we might have otherwise. In the regular Army, I also was given huge responsibilities. And in those responsibilities, I grew, I learned. Initially, one of the big lessons was looking beyond the surface, because like an iceberg, you can focus on what you can see. There's many things to consider beyond that. My first platoon sergeant, he spoke a good game. He came in, he looked the part, and he spoke the part. He was terrible. He didn't really care about the troops, and he just did things that were making it so much worse. He was cheating on his wife, and there's just so many things but I didn't understand that until my second platoon sergeant came in. The troops, knowing that he was smart and capable, came running to me and telling me that he was countermanding my orders. Well, in the military, if you tell people something different than the platoon leader, I may have only been in the military less than 6 months, but by golly, I was the platoon leader. And Sergeant Scott, I gave him the option when I listened to what people told me, and I assumed the worst. I went after him, read him the riot act, and told him that, I'm in charge, and if he can handle that, then I'll find him another job. And for whatever reason, he saw potential in me, and he coached me. He decided to stay. He sometimes would have to take me aside and say what was happening. And when he'd look at my face, he'd say, "You cannot do that in front of the troops." And I would learn how I had to deal with the most outrageous things that might happen in a particular day. He would explain and help me with what I wanted to accomplish, which was to do a great job and to serve the military well and take care of my people. We had them 24/7, so you can imagine the kind of issues you have with younger and more senior people than you, and then having to work with them and accomplish your job. I kept getting promoted. I jumped out of airplanes, amazing experiences. Now, to be fair, I went to jump school to jump out of these airplanes while I was a cadet, and that was our summer training. So I had a little bit under my belt, but then you do it for an exercise, and that was challenging to be mostly the only woman there. Every job that I had was pretty much the first woman that ever held that job. And then I was vastly outnumbered. There were only 2 units, our unit and one other unit, that had any women in it. It's a challenge because you had to deal with certain circumstances. It's just lesson after lesson, learning and dealing with people, being people, and how do you work with that. Throughout my career, I kept getting more and more responsibility. It became apparent to me that while I thought all I had to do was be strong and just kind of get through whatever the challenge was, I learned pretty quickly that isn't a very good strategy. It's not the worst strategy. I got through it, muddled through it, but there's a better strategy. When people disappointed you or you had really tough situations, personally and professionally, you have to be balancing those things. Personally, for me, I had married right out of West Point, for example, and my mate was someone who graduated a year earlier. You're really in a fishbowl. You don't know who you are, let alone the other person. It was pretty clear within 6 months that it wasn't working out for us. But I didn't get the memo. It happened on a day when I was told by my husband at the time, he said, "I don't love you anymore." Now, there was other stuff going on, but the fact was, truly, it was good that we did not stay together because there were things that I couldn't overcome. And it mainly is based on trust. And trust was another key lesson in my personal life and my professional life. Always conduct yourself in a way that you can be trustworthy and that you trust other people. I have to tell you, when people lie or they cheat or you raise your voice, anytime you go negative, I'll categorize all those, which is what I do now, negative. You can tell a negative action, a negative word, or a negative feeling pretty quickly now, I would hope. And those negative times, again, I didn't understand that when I engaged in it, then that can not just break the trust, it shakes the foundation of the relationship. Learning that, I then became laser focused on the one question, and this was key for my success going forward. I became obsessed with trying to figure out how could I stay at my best when life was at its worst. That could be someone yelling at you, or it could be my own self-doubt, or just a challenging situation like a divorce. My self-doubt was probably the hardest to work through, because I think we're most critical, at least what I've learned, most critical with ourselves. I learned that I needed to be my best. What does that look like? How can I quickly recover from the time that I was at West Point? These lessons came together to be called stress intelligence training. Stress is one of those things. I wish I had learned that after my first divorce, but I didn't. I was divorced twice. Sometimes things just don't feel right. And I learned that I had to figure out, how do I get my best back? What is it I need to do in order to get my best back? That's what I did. Through all of this, I have gathered strategies, insights, and tools. I went from West Point and I commanded wonderful organizations in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. One had 550 people, covered 5 states, I think 11,500 square miles in Philadelphia. One was in Seattle, and I had 850 personnel, 99,000 square miles, and a much harder mission because they'd had a presidential disaster declaration in that region like 41 years in a row. You could guarantee ongoing projects, but you had to deal with disasters. And as I worked through these challenges, I kept coming up with ways that I could, not just for myself, but I could share. Another lesson was, we're all on the same team. Much like our nation, much like the world, we are all on the same team. We may not be acting that way. How do I bring out the best in everyone? Under ideal conditions is not so hard because you have shared values and you help each other. The next level of difficulty was I needed to bring out the best in myself if I couldn't do it for everybody. And the highest level, which was during these most trying times, was, okay, how do I go from a negative space to a positive place fast? Now remember, I did engineering. I was in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm not going to stay in a negative state, no matter how many rough bosses who preferred yelling and screaming and disparaging to having a few examples of some excellent leaders. I could discern who did I want to be and how could I help and what was my place. All of these jobs kept helping me get better and better. That's where this body of knowledge continued. 26 years later, I'm in combat. I'm leading a $2.1 billion engineer construction program. Right before the surge happened in our area, thousands more soldiers taking action, I didn't get any more people. And we were trying to do the construction. We were building roads and judicial buildings, hospitals, sewage treatment, water treatment, power stations. We were managing hydropower dams. We were doing all kinds of things as the conflict continued. And then they added 300, they told me when I first got there that they were going to get rid of my job in our command at the end of the year, but then the Samara Mosque was blown up and all hell broke loose. And it was terrible. If you looked on a map in Baghdad, which was my area, now Anbar province was also my area, it was all red. We wanted to make sure that our people were safe. The 130 Iraqis who work for us and the 250 security detail that supported us, I only had 36 military. I had 125 Department of Defense civilians who were from all over the world. We were a volunteer team. My people rotated out 15 to 20% a month. How do you influence that? How do you set your organization up for success? And believe it or not, we were highly successful with the things that we did. I can't tell you the talent and the amazing people who worked for me. And my point was asking an effective question, which is one of the tools that I offer. And the effective question I would ask them when I was out and about was, your job is already so difficult. What is one thing that I can do to help you? Imagine being that person. It's important that you pay attention to the people around you. Mentally tough women is something that I help women be successful. It continues to be an uneven playing field. You should never have to lose your heart, and you should never have to lose your joy. How do you hold on to that and be your best no matter what happens? You need to acquire stress intelligence. I remember being at a conference right after I retired where a woman was humiliated by the speaker, and I could see how it was playing out in her face. We were in front of 500 people, and I was just someone in the audience going to a conference, as many of you have done. Later on, I found her, and she was sitting down, and I sat next to her, and I started talking to her. Well, quickly, I asked her a few questions. How are you doing? I was there, and she said, I have not been able to stop crying since that time. I went up to my room, and I cried, and then I tried to come down, and I just came down for like the third time, and I still feel horrible. Well, we had a little talk, and in 30 minutes, she thanked me, and then she left. I caught up with her later on, and she said, it was so helpful because I haven't cried since. I enjoyed myself at the reception later on, which I thought for sure I'd never go to. When you do that, that's the power of knowing how you can help other people. There's a lot of women out there who are wanting to make a difference in the world, but they are finding themselves absolutely taken over and losing themselves, getting crushed in this often brutal world that we face. I like to show them how you can see these obstacles as opportunities, how you can handle yourself in some of the toughest situations. It led to creating a new training program. Pieces of this training program, over 7,500, signed up for 2 courses I offered, and they're from 138 countries. So many people wanted this stress intelligence training in order to help women who care, who want to make a difference, but they're being taken down by these forces that are out there because why? They have never learned these things, they don't have the training, and they haven't become skillful in applying them for their particular situation. That's why I'm excited to be able to offer the program where you will learn these things and so much more. How to be your best. And exercises that go along with that, as well as discussions and separate tools that will help bring out your best. Continue to watch this channel, watch these videos, and learn something about yourself and have relationships. I love to take women and improve their confidence and help them be successful, not just there, but in life. In my case, my husband, I've been married to almost 3 decades. While we both went to West Point at the same time, I did not meet him until 17 years later, which I have to say was the best time to meet him, even though I was actually kind of rude to him because I told him I would never go out with another military guy. A year and a half later, turned out to be an incredible human being and someone who constantly helps pick me up when I get knocked down. He doesn't do the fights for me, but he helps me when I get knocked down, and he advises me in ways that help me be my best. Each and every day, he reminds me I want to be at my best. And that's exactly why many of us have multiple coaches to help us. I look forward to what's next. Take a look at what we have on the website and the links that we have so you can explore and see if this is right for you. Stress intelligence training for mentally tough women. I look forward to working with you and finding out how all of us can help women be more successful in this world no matter how tough things get. And when we do that, everyone who is associated with them will benefit. Their children, their family, their friends, their co-workers. Because when you unleash the potential in each of us, the extraordinary happens. I've seen it time and time again. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you.